What's going on, Bucs fans? Back here at Pirate Parlay Podcast on the Sick Podcast Network. I am your host, JC Allen. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be recapping the Bucs' gritty win over the Detroit Lions, put them 2-0 after a 2016 victory against one of the premier teams in the NFL and certainly in the NFC. And then we'll take a quick, brief look at the upcoming opponent with the Denver Broncos. We'll get more into that later when we have our special guest on, kind of behind the enemy lines. And we'll be joined by special guest Josh Queipo of Pewter Report. Excited to have him on. He's also a permanent fixture with John Ledyard on their podcast as well. They do great stuff. Check that out. But we'll be right back after the break.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Pirate Parlay.
Battle intercepted, picked off in the end zone. Bucs are going to beat the Chiefs. We're the champions of the world.
The sickest Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. It's going to be sick.
Back here on the other side of the break. Again, I'm your host, JC Allen, here at the Pirate Parlay Podcast on the Sick Podcast Network. If you're new here and you haven't been around, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're back, thank you. Appreciate it. Hit that like button. And always don't forget to turn on reminders. That way, whenever we go live, you get the notification. You can hop on in, join the fun. We'll be taking some of your questions, some of your comments. So feel free to get involved in the chat. We'll definitely talk shop with you there as well. But without further ado, let me bring my guest in, none other than the Cap Genius. He's a film guy. He does everything here and there. Amazing writer as well. Great friend, Josh Queipo of Pewter Report.
You are too kind, sir. I don't deserve half the plaudits you give me.
He's really a scumbag. I'm just nice. No, I'm just
there kidding. You go. Now we're talking.
now we're talking. No, but Josh, first off, thank you for joining me as always. I feel like this is probably like our third or fourth show. Always great stuff when we have you on here. So appreciate you coming on. How are you doing?
I'm having a good day, man. I'm really enjoying starting to break down some of the tape as we get more information about the Bucs' new look offense and possibly their new look defense. And then, just kind of looking ahead to week 3 against the Broncos and what new wrinkles the Bucs might have in store for us then.
Well, let's talk about the week that was there with the Detroit Lions. Bucs come in, they win big week 1, other than a late touchdown in the 2-minute, pretty much 37 points on the board. They come into Detroit banged up, down Kalijah Cansey, down Antoine Winfield Jr., down Luke Gedeke, lose Vita Vea, and they find a gritty way to win. And they eke out the victory 20-16, come up with some really strong goal line stands at the end there. Lions had 3 chances to get into the end zone, and they stuffed them every time back there towards the end of the game. What was your kind of biggest takeaway from that? For me, again, it was showing you can win 2 different types of way, and I think that's going to give them a lot of confidence going forward in the season. But what was your biggest takeaway from that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just at the end of the game, right? I mean, look, the Lions had 8 trips into the red zone, and they were only able to get 1 touchdown. I mean, that's probably not a sustainable rate, but the Bucs also had, I think Chris Godwin was talking about it, Bucs had one of the best red zone defenses in the NFL last year, and it's very much a part of their DNA that, they may allow you to get some yards, but once it gets down to the nitty-gritty, they're pretty good at stopping you from actually getting into the end zone, and that was probably peak, performance there against a very good Lions offense. I think my big takeaways were, I think you saw the emergence of some young Bucs. I would say on the defense, some guys had some coming out parties, right? A lot of guys played really well, but there were 2 or 3 who I would say, in my eyes, kind of stood out and showed, I'm probably going to be a really high level player in the league for years to come. And then beyond that, it was that very much like the Chiefs Super Bowl, Todd Bowles changed some things up. He went a little unbowlsy for this game, and it did enough to really throw off Jared Goff to force him into some big time turnovers, right? The Bucs got 2 interceptions, probably should have had a 3rd turnover in the Zyon, what would have been probably a scoop and score off of I think it was Amon-Ra St. Brown fumble.
Yeah, Indian. Zyon came with a big hit. And then Amon Ra, they ripped the ball out of his hands. So we're talking 4 there potentially if Zion can hold on. And then he was inches away from on that last play of the third down play. Just kind of reading that route to Jameson Williams. He kind of he's a half a second quicker. He undercuts that ball. It's not a PBU. That's an icing right there.
Yeah. Are you talking about the Whitehead one? Because there was also the Whitehead drop.
Oh, the Whitehead one. So yeah, nearly six turnovers.
Lots of errors for Detroit that either turned out to be turnovers or almost turnovers for the Bucs. And a lot of that stemmed from Bowles kind of really reinventing his defense almost on the fly, because I don't expect this to be a long-term change for him, but he showed that in a single game against a high-level opponent with a potent offense, he can do some, the old dog's got some new tricks, right? And it really showed up for the Bucs and helped secure the win, because the offense only got 20 points, right? So
don't tease us, Josh. Don't tease us. What are some of those new tricks? You're talking about, you teased it a little bit. The scheme. What did he do?
So JC Allen, when I ask you to describe a Todd Bowles defense, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
You better buckle up, because they're coming.
Right, the blitz, right? He's consistently top 3, top 5 in blitz rate year over year over year over year. But and to start the game, Bowles blitzed early, right? But when it came down to the fourth quarter, I was just talking with John Ledyard about this. I believe the Bucs only had 1 blitz in the fourth quarter. Now, the interesting thing was, as I was pouring through the NFL Pro data or next gen stats, you saw so many non-traditional pass rushers with 1, 2, 4, 5 pass rushes in the fourth quarter. So if they weren't blitzing, but all these guys who aren't pass rushers are rushing, what does that mean? It means Todd Bowles, at least for 1 quarter in 1 game, adopted what's become kind of en vogue in the NFL. Mike McDonald's defense, formerly of the Ravens, as the defensive coordinator, now the head coach of the Seahawks, which is sim pressures. For those of your viewers who don't know what a sim pressure is, it's pretty simple. You're still going to rush 4 players, just like a typical defensive rush would have. But the 4 that are coming aren't the 4 that you're necessarily expecting. They're not the 4 down linemen, or for the Bucs in this case, your defensive linemen and your outside linebackers. It's an inside linebacker. It's a nickel. It's a safety. So they're coming from different angles in an unexpected fashion, oftentimes running stunts and loops. I think the Bucs ran 11 stunts in the fourth quarter. So 4 rushers, not typical Todd Bowles, ton of stunts. I think he's the number 1 stunting defense in the NFL right now. A lot of it because of this Detroit game. And it threw Jared Goff off. If you remember the interception to Chris Godwin, right, in the late in the fourth quarter, I think it was about 6 minutes left. Yeah. Levante David was in Goff's face mask, right? Yeah. It was him and Mike Green, right?
CJ Brewer.
CJ Brewer, that's right. David came in off of a loop from an odd angle and basically came in untouched. Frank Ragnow couldn't pick him up. And that was what led to, because Jared Goff's not great under pressure. You give him a great offensive line that picks up the rush, he's going to tear apart the defense. The Bucs were able to find a creative way to get pressure, and that led to unforced errors from Goff. And then, like I said, the other thing was you had all of those young defensive players who really showed up. We'll get to them a little bit later. I'm sure you want to ask me about them.
Yeah, and it's funny, I talk about getting pressure after Goff and disrupting him. It was actually, if you guys pay attention, one of my keys to cannon fire this week was to get pressure on him, but they had to do it creatively. And Josh just laid out how they did it creatively with simulated pressure, because Jared Goff is one of the best quarterbacks, actually finished last year, the best quarterback with passing yards when blitzed. So Jared Goff will make you pay when you blitz him, but when you get pressure on him with your base, with your 4, whether that's your front lineman, whether that's your simulated, whatever you're doing, that's when you can really affect his throws. And as Josh just laid out, that's exactly what they did. They sent Tykee, they sent Jordan Whitehead. I want to say they sent Jamel on 1 play, I think, maybe.
Jamel got 1 pressure according to next gen stats, but Levante had 4 or 5. Servasi Dennis had a couple.
Had a bunch, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a very creative game plan. It was fun to watch live. It was even more fun to watch back, on the All 22 the day after.
And you know what? That was, I think, a perfect game too of sacks versus pressures. And now everyone wants the sacks, and even the Bucs want the sacks, and they only have 2 on the season. But they are tied for 3rd in the league with pressures in 42. And we saw this game exactly what pressures can do and how they can dictate the flow of the game. So I thought that was a perfect example. I thought Todd Bowles called his best, and we talked about this, his best defense as a head coach since he's been the head coach, obviously not including that Chiefs game. What?
I see what you did there as a head coach.
Right, as a head coach.
Coming at you for that Chiefs game, and you have to go, he was a defensive coordinator.
He was a defensive coordinator. But as a head coach, I think, and you know what? It was funny to see a lot of people. I always post an MVP after the game, and a lot of votes for Todd. A lot of love for Todd. And that hot seat is starting to get a little bit colder, I think, with these Bucs fans who, even though he's done a lot, through his tenure.
There's any heat on that seat.
I don't think there's any heat. And I think the people who might have thought there were heat, there isn't any there. So I also want to talk about some of these young guys. You brought it up. Let's bring up a guy who me and you were both very high on. If you guys are loyal listeners to Pirate Parlay, you already know who I'm talking about. Mr. Zyon McCollum, who so far his pass rating allowed this season is a 4.2 when he's targeted. He was targeted 5 times, I believe, on Sunday and only let up 1 catch for 5 yards. Obviously had the interception, nearly had the second interception. That was, Amon-Ra St. Brown ripped out of his hands. If they did call that a fumble on Zyon, he, as you mentioned, had the scoop and score probably with that 4.33 speed, and then made a huge play on 3rd down on that final series for Detroit, where he came up, just kind of read what Goff was doing, and was able to get the pass breakup on Jameson Williams, and likely would have had a interception if he was just a beat faster to ice the game. But he's impressed me. I was really sad to see him go down because I felt like that was going to be his coming out, but he had his coming out game this week. Your thoughts on Zyon and just the game he played overall and where the trajectory goes from here?
Yeah, I think it would have been hard for him to have a coming out party week 1 just because Jaden Daniels was so much like first read and run, right? So, but this was the perfect game because Jared Goff threw the ball over 50 times, right? And traditionally, Goff has destroyed Bowles and the Bucs defense over the years. So you rattled off some stats. I'm going to go into next gen stats.
Further.
It's really impressive. He had 64 coverage reps in week 2, right? Actually, do I have this? I don't have this for week 2. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. 57 coverage reps in week 2. He was targeted 5 times. He allowed 1 catch for 4 yards. And I went back and I looked at that catch. He was considered the nearest defender by Next Gen Stats. And what that was a broken play where Goff ended up scrambling to the right. The receiver, I can't remember if it was St. Brown. I think it was, ended up coming back to the line of scrimmage, and they got it right on the sideline. But McCollum had tight coverage for the concept of the play. All right. 4 yards allowed over 57 coverage reps. I am not a mathematician. I sometimes wish I was, so I'm going to use my calculator here. That's 0.07 yards per coverage rep. It's incredible. That's all pro type of number there, right? Plus the interception. He allowed a catch rate of 20%. That's 12.6% less than expected. And when he was targeted in coverage, the Lions offense had a negative 8.2 expected points added, which means every time he was targeted, their chances of scoring went down. All right. That he had an 80% hawk rate per Next Gen Stats and forced 40% of the throws that were he was targeted in to be tight window throws. This man had a phenomenal game. Now, like you said, you and I were both high on Zyon coming into this season. A lot of people were skeptical on whether he could replace Carlton Davis, even though most people were low on Davis to begin with. They were just like, what are the Bucs going to do with this corner room? You can't trust Zyon. But last year he had a solid season. It was by no means amazing. There were things he had to work on.
But he was all over the place too, though. I mean, you didn't have time to settle in.
True. That's very true. But the big thing that I honed in on looking at his tape over the course of 2023, and you saw it get better towards the end of the year. But I noted in an article that I wrote for Pewter Report over the offseason that for him to really take the next step, he had to get better on in-breaking routes. And that's what the Lions love to do. That is where they eat. That is the meat and potatoes of their offense outside of their run game. So that's what he was doing. He got his pick on an in-breaker. He squeezed another in-breaker with a pass defense. And it really just came down to him trusting his athleticism and trusting his eyes and not trying to cheat routes. And that's what he was doing in 2023. He was cheating routes and he was hoping for outbreakers, and he would often get played as the receiver broke in. This year, he waited for the stem. He saw the in-breaker, and then he let his natural athleticism take over, where he was able to reduce the amount of space between him and the receiver and make a play on the ball. It was beautiful. It was a coming out party. It's the start of what will most likely be a Pro Bowl season for Zyon McCollum, and I am here for it.
I'm so here for it. And you just kind of said, where did you guys hear that from? Relying on his natural ability, because now he's not using his speed as a crutch. He's using it as a weapon. You saw him 1 catch, 4 yards, and as Josh broke down, nearest defender. He had 2 pass deflections, including the pick. I thought he had a heck of a game. I'm so excited for him as a person because he's a great person, but as a player and for this Bucs defense, I think he's going to be great. I want to run through some comments real quick, and then we'll move on to some of these other young guys in the secondary. One I know is Josh's favorite guy that he was scouting throughout the draft. Had a flu-like Michael Jordan game. We'll get into his play because I thought it went very under the radar. So I want you to put it on the radar of all these Bucs fans. But Greg Cruz says the play of Mock has been inconsistent. How long can they continue with this guy? I think it's been up and down for sure, but I feel like there's more trajectory up than down.
Yeah, he had a good game against Detroit. So he had 1 loss, which resulted in Aiden Hutchinson's first sack. It was on basically a stunt twist where Hutchinson looped back inside. But outside of that, in pass protection, Mount had a really good game against 2 very good defensive tackles. Now, DJ Reader is more of a run stuffing defensive tackle, but Aleem McNeil is a legit pass rusher, and Malk helps hold him up for the most part. So I would say he had a good day in pass protection. If you want to blame Malk for run troubles, he had some bad reps in run blocking, but who didn't? I mean, the Bucs run blocking goes well beyond the right guard or run blocking issues. So Malk, I would say through his first 2 games, definitely leveled up from where he was last year. And I think the arrow is pointing up personally.
Yeah. I think pass pro is fine. I'm not worried about him pass pro. I mean, that was a difficult loop to pick up when Hutchinson came around.
Late, his eyes are still a little late, but the athleticism is there, and I believe that the eyes will continue to get better for both him and Graham Barkley.
Agree. And he didn't have Cody. He didn't have Luke there too. Like that's something that they have worked on religiously in the offseason last year, that he'll know when that's coming, just from little motions and movements that he had. He's working with Justin School. So Justin School didn't have a terrible game outside of those 4.5 sacks. It's a tough sell.
But I wrote an entire article about it, so I might as well just jump on that bandwagon with you.
It's a tough sell, but the other reps, he looked really good. And once they started utilizing it, because it took Cohen a second he didn't want to take Kate Otten out of the game. He ended up having no choice. And then it cooled down for him a little bit. But I think Mock's going to be fine. Run game, I think, just needs to kind of be better. But again, they went against 2 really good run defending teams back-to-back weeks and 2 really strong defensive tackles.
I get what you're trying, and I've heard lots of other people. You're making excuses for it. The run game is terrible, and the Rams got more out of their run game against Detroit with basically high school gym teachers playing offensive line. So if the Rams can do that with your local grocery store clerk, the Bucs with 4/5 of their offensive line healthy should be able to get more. I agree. Downright, that is the worst part of their team right now is their run blocking. Their run game. Or you could say my boy, Jake Camarda.
Yeah, Jake's pretty bad. Richard says, hey, JC and Josh. Greg does a great job, JC and Josh. Mac with the quality analysis. Appreciate you. Grizzle says, two of the best covering the Bucs. Appreciate you, sir. Greg says, if they can confuse a veteran QB, good luck, Bo Nix. Yeah. Josh won't have enough time to get into the Broncos segment, but yeah, good luck. Second and Fun says Bucs are third in team pressures. Diaby is fifth in pressure and third in win percentage. Diaby looked really strong. I think he's just going to continue to build on that. Greg says Carlton who? Once again, Light and company know who to keep and who to let walk. It was I think it was a beneficial trade for both teams. Obviously, it nets you win. Yeah. Richard says, are Bucs lucky for Lions to have too many men penalty to end the first half? If Lions had those 3 points and second play out of the way, it did. Lions would only need a field goal to take a lead.
That is absolutely correct, Richard. Absolutely. I think it's a great point. And just if you look at some of the underlying metrics of the game, and I'm not trying to take anything away from the Bucs. You saw me at the beginning of this podcast. I was excited about what they did in the red zone. But a lot of the underlying metrics, the Lions had more explosive plays. Typically, the team with the more explosive plays is going to win more often than not. The Lions absolutely were more efficient on offense. They had more red zone trips. All of these things over a large sample size typically point out your winner, right? They have better EPA per play. The Bucs turned the tide on a couple of things. Number one, the turnover battle, right? Winning that 2-0, right? I don't think the Bucs had a turnover.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, that's right. Okay, 2-1. And then the other thing was that at the end of the first half was a huge swing at the end of the game. So I think it's a great point out. Bucs were lucky to get that win in some sense, some ways, but a win is a win. It goes in the column as a W.
Yeah. We'll talk about this guy in a second. Max says Voss has also been very impressive. Christopher Cole says, hey guys. Richard says it's not our fault. The Lions head coach blundered that. CD3 blew the coverage on the Godwin touchdown. Greg says, I'm glad he did, but if he didn't, Bucs probably have an L, probably. Sal says he's definitely not living up to a high second pick. Let's be honest. Let's not be dishonest. Where he was picked, he should be much better. He's talking about
Cody Mauch.
Yeah, Cody Mauch was a bottom of the round pick.
Yeah,
and I think
in the second round. And again, offensive linemen typically suck their first year. I think Ian Beckles used to tell Trevor Sikkema this all the time, right? Rookies suck. Rookie offensive linemen just suck, right? I think a lot of people get spoiled on someone like Tristan Wirfs, right? But if you remember Luke Gedeke after year one, who was a second round pick, right? Nobody thought he was going to hold up. He had a couple of solid games to begin 2023 and then just continued to ascend. So I see a similar trajectory for Mauch. I'm really excited about his play. I've watched every snap so far this year. He's had a couple of losses. He's going to continue to have a few losses, but he's definitely improved from last year. I would say he's performing at a league average or better skill level at this moment. So
yeah, I think he's gonna be fine. You got to remember small school, South Dakota State. Switching from left side to the right side.
And I'm pretty sure Cody would.
North Dakota State. You're right. South Dakota State was my guy this year. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, but I think he'll be fine. I mean, he's fully transitioned now. Luke was out too, so I think he'll be fine. We're stonewalled Hutch. Very true. Josh cannot survive playing that many snaps in the red zone. It's amazing that didn't have a coverage breakdown with all those young players. Uche Ebo says, what are you guys' opinion on the Saints, folks? For real, fake or for real?
So I think Clint Kubiak has really done a number on that offense. Kubiak's from the Shanahan tree. What's interesting is the entire NFC South now working from the Shanahan-McVay tree in terms of offensive coordinators. But Kubiak, I think, has simplified some things for Carr. I want to say almost half their pass attempts have been off of play action, which slows down the pass rush. They've simplified the responsibilities for the offensive line in a lot of ways there. They're playing from a lead, which makes it easier for them to do that. And if they can continue to play from a lead, I think it's going to be very difficult for the Saints to be stopped. However, we know in the NFL, you don't always play from a lead. And I think once they get into some of those situations where they're down 7, 10, 14 points in the second half and they have to go to a straight drop back game, I think that's where you're going to see some of the offensive line underlying issues with some of the talent there. And then as far as the defense goes, they've got a really great secondary. I think you got Kool-Aid McKinstry, you've got Marshawn Lattimore, you've still got Tyrann Mathieu, and then Paulson Adebo, I want to say, is playing at a high level. He's due for a good contract next year. So very much like the Bucs, who have a very talented secondary, can take your defense a long way. I think the two teams match up really well against each other for a dogfight, and it'll be a really interesting matchup. I don't think their offense can sustain this level of performance. Dallas has trouble fitting the run. They have for over a year now. Carolina's defense is just in shambles along with the rest of the team. So I think as they face more difficult defenses with better run stuffing ability, you're going to see a different level from the Saints. Not that they're not going to be good, but they're not at this level.
All right, we got a cap question for you. Then we'll get into the other two young players, and I know I got to get you out of here, so we'll be quick about it. I'm going to keep you longer than you told me anyways. But, hey, Josh, should the Bucs carry over the remaining cap space into next year? Will it be enough to re-sign Godwin?
Yes, it's an interesting question. It really depends on how much Godwin continues to perform, right? I think I tweeted about this a few days ago. If he continues at his current level, which is, 125 catches, 1,700 yards, and 17 touchdowns off the top of my head, he's going to be worth like $28 to $30 million a year. It's ridiculous. I don't think that the Bucs keep him at that price. He's not likely to continue at that rate. But I was just looking at it. I was talking with somebody out from the Pew Report crew. That 2-game performance has probably kicked up his APY by about $500,000. And where I had it before the season was probably about $24.5 million per year. Now, to your question, can they afford him? They can afford him. All right. Are they going to? It's a much trickier question because it again puts him $3.5 million in APY. Let's just say he gets the 25. I'm sorry, that would put him $4.5 million in APY over Mike Evans, who is a future Ring of Honor member, who is the greatest Buccaneer according to Hall of Famer, greatest Buccaneer ever according to Kyle Brandt of NFL Network. How will Mike feel about that? He's been notoriously selfless, but I think the Bucs also want to keep a pecking order there. So can they afford him? Yes. Will they keep him? I think that's much more of a 50-50 proposition.
See, I think he's not going anywhere. I think he's going to take less than what you're predicting him. And I think Mike, who once went to Jason Land and said, take money from me to keep Chris when he was up for a contract, will be fine with him. If it's not grossly overpaying, I think you still get Godwin. Again, I was like talking much less, but I think still around $22 million. You can probably keep Godwin around. There's nowhere I think he wants to play. I think this is his brotherhood, his fraternity. They made a bunch of money off that second contract. Him and his wife are fully entrenched in the area. I think he takes a hometown discount. And when the final numbers come out, people are like, oh, wow. There might be creative ways where he can get up to certain amounts, but I think his base package and what he'll deal will be a lot less than many people think. Last two questions, and I'll get you out of here because I know you got to run. Give me your quick thoughts on Tykee Smith, Servassier Dennis, and Yaya Diaby, all three guys you were tweeting about and very high on after the win over the Lions.
Yeah, so quick hits. One play for Tykee that was just bonkers to me. Lions were in the red zone, as they were much of Sunday. The Bucs were running quarter, half, so cover 6 is another way of thinking about it. The Lions ran a corner route from the slot to Tykee's side. He was responsible for the flat hook to that side. So the corner route is not something that he is responsible for picking up. It was the safety's job to pinch down on it. And the safety, I think it was Chris Izzy, it might have been Whitehead, I can't remember, but he was trailing the corner. The ball placement from Goff was good, probably would have been a touchdown. Tykee sees the route breaking in real time, abandons his responsibility, books it for the pylon, and breaks up the pass. Okay. This is a high-level play that you wouldn't expect a veteran to make. He is a rookie. It is ridiculous. It is the second time he has done this in his short career because it harkens back to a play that he made in almost the exact same fashion against the Bengals in the preseason. The only difference was on that one, he didn't get his head around and just ran through Jermaine Burton for a DPI. This one, he gets his head around, he breaks up the pass, he makes sure he doesn't get hit for the penalty, stops the touchdown, which again, if that touchdown scores, this is probably isn't a Bucs win we're talking about. So phenomenal IQ, makeup. It'll be interesting to see what he does in man coverage, although the Bucs don't run a ton of man. But in terms of as a zone slot defender, couldn't be higher on the guy. He was my number one safety in the NFL draft. He's making me look good right now. All right. Yaya added a new tool to his tool belt, if you will. Last year, he basically just tried to run through guys. He tried to run to the top of the arc and through the tackle as a bull rusher, 2 hands. That was about it. This year, he is winning consistently with an inside move. He gets the tackle to open up and widen the arc, and then he hits that inside shoulder with all of his power, all of his length, drives through it, and creates pressure from the middle. All right. Is he ever going to be an elite tier 1 edge rusher? I still don't think that's it. But he's going to be a good edge rusher who can get consistent pressure. The Bucs used to have a good edge rusher who could get consistent pressure. His name was Shaq Barrett, and they were able to go a long way with that being their number one. So Diaby's added a new tool. It adds a new layer to the Bucs defense because it allows them to get pressure with 4, especially when Kancey gets back. Really, really excited about him. Servassier Dennis is a targeted missile. All right. The stop that he made late in the fourth quarter on, I want to say it was a screen to Jahmyr Gibbs, where he just blew the play up, was phenomenal. His instincts, he's playing fast, he's recognizing things. And here's something that Bucs fans can really appreciate because it's been a long time since they've had this next to Levante David. He just goes where he's supposed to go. He's assignment sound. And you put that in this defense in the middle, and they're going to need that from Dennis because I do think that Levante's sunsetting his career. You notice he's not a guy anybody's talking about after this win. Not that he did anything bad, but I do think that the days that the Bucs defense leaned on Levante may be over. Doesn't mean that he can't still be a serviceable part of this defense, but for Todd Bowles and Jason Light to kind of time it up to where Levante's probably not that tier 1, just absolute playmaker, makes everybody else right, as some of these other players are starting to hit, a new level and become those players. It's a pretty amazing transition. Now, this is all based off a very small sample size of 1 to 2 games, but if it continues at this trajectory, having that guy who can kind of take over, much more athletic version of Levante, is pretty amazing to have on your team.
I'll say it right now too, and Bucs fans, it's sad, but enjoy every second you're getting of Levante because I think this could be his last season with the Buccaneers in the NFL, especially if Servassier continues to show that upward trajectory. I think he'll be very happy passing the torch to Servassier, knowing that this KJ Britt will probably be re-signed to a cheap deal, probably bringing some competition to the draft or something like that. And I think he'll be very happy leaving the linebacker room in those hands. So enjoy what you get out of Levante every single day. Don't take it for granted because he was on the fence this year. I think if they do win a Super Bowl this year, which is crazy to even say, Josh, because
it's possible.
Feels like a real possibility now. I had NFC Championship game. You had NFC Championship game. Mr. Half Glass Full. Me and him are both on the same wavelength right now, and it feels like that's winning an NFC Championship game. It could actually be a possibility. Again, 2 games. It's overreaction time. 2 weeks in. Same thing with 2 weeks in a training camp. But I think this team has what it takes if they can get healthy. Stay healthy. I think they'll be in prime for a good run, even if they do split that gauntlet down the middle. Josh Queipo of Pewter Report, I thank you so much. Tell them I'm sorry for keeping you late. But
you can find me at Pewter Report. I'm writing for them. You can find me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Josh_Queipo. It's spelled weird. Queipo. I try and post some film stuff there, give my cap thoughts. I also have a Substack. I'll have to get it into my bio on Twitter, but that's where you can find my thoughts on contracts, projected contracts for players who could be up for new contracts next year. So that's where you can find me. JC, it's been a blast, but I do have to run.
Yeah, see you later. And his contract predictions are spot on. He's getting better and better. He's an amazing person. Josh Queipo, Pewter Report, one of my good friends in the business. We've hung out multiple times out of this whole environment here. I love the kid. He's an awesome person, and he does awesome work. So if you're not following him, go check him out, because he's truly an ascending talent, and I really think he's got the chops to do this full time somewhere. All right, let's jump back into the comments, because we've got a whole bunch, and we'll jump into that. I appreciate everyone being in here. Again, if you're just tuning in, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Again, if you guys are watching on Twitter, I appreciate you, but come on over to YouTube, if only just to like and subscribe. That's it. And then you can go back to watching Twitter, because it's more convenient, because you can close it down and whatnot. But I appreciate everybody. Before we get into your comments, I just caught up where we're at. I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors over at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Cruise. I told you once, I'll tell you again, buy your dang tickets, people. It's September 18th. You have until early December to make payments on these things. More and more players are being announced as the days go on. You can see some of them there: Jordan Whitehead, Brad Johnson, Trey Palmer, Yaya Diaby, Graham Barton, Kalijah Cansey, Jamel Dean, Zyon McCollum, Cade Otton, Mike Allstott, Derek Brooks. The list goes, Dexter Jackson. The list goes on and on and on. You're not going to want to miss this cruise. It's so much fun. It's from March 7th to 10th. It leaves out of Fort Lauderdale, hits Key West, hits Bimini, Bahamas. It's such an amazing cruise. You got a sail away party, trivia contest, bingo, cocktail parties, player panels, water ball volleyball competition, which is pretty fun to watch. Last year we had Warren Sapp doing backflips off the pool deck. It was something to see. Theme parties and so much more that keep the fun going all cruise long. It's such an amazing experience too when you get to see these guys, because you get to see them out and about, get to have conversations. If you got kids, we last year, Yaya, JTS, and Izzy, and they're all playing football with them up on the grass deck with a bunch of the kids. It was really a fun sight to see. But it's so cool. You get some one-on-one interactions. You're not rushed through like an autograph signing a line. So don't miss this awesome opportunity to team up. Meet some of your favorite members of the team and make lasting relationships with Bucs fans. I know some people who now tailgate with each other this year, or some people are they're out of state and they do watch parties and stuff like that. So make sure you guys are looking into that. If you can't go this year, next year there'll be another one, but make sure you at least keep some tabs on it. It's an amazing thing. Link in the bio. Check them out. Let's get back to some of these comments here. Alrighty. We were talking about Chris Godwin. Someone asked if Godwin would be a number one if Mike wasn't here. Let me try to find it. Yeah, someone said I can't find it in the comments, but I don't know. I mean, it really depends, because Godwin, so much opens up for Godwin because of his ability, because Mike Evans' ability to take the top off. And like, that's one of the big things that I'm going to look for. And probably one of my keys to the game this week is making sure that you can still get the offense involved and getting Mike involved, because there's many cornerbacks that you can just say, you're covering Mike Evans, follow him. Patrick Surtain is one of them. That doesn't need a safety over the top. So it's going to be interesting to see how Liam Cohen operates and gets everybody else into position to make plays, because you're already down. Now you're down. It's pretty much 9 on 10 at that point when you've got two guys covering Mike Evans. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know if he could be. He's that slot receiver type. So maybe a team that features slot receivers heavily and has some good, decent pieces on the outside that can stand up on their own. But if you're just plugging him on a crap team and saying you're our number one wide receiver, I don't think that works. So, he puts up the numbers, but it's also a lot of that is definitely because they have, they have a guy like Mike Evans who can draw the coverage. Richard Trenko's, I can't say his last name, but Jason Kelce wasn't Jason Kelce until a few years under his belt. Greg says, I thought Kamara was done. Apparently not. Kamara was not done on my fantasy team. I'll tell you that. I got stuck taking him. I didn't want him. And then week 2 comes along. I'm like, thank goodness. MK says, hit that like button. Appreciate you. Farouk Kaweb says, so you're saying Baker should throw it to J-Mac and Mike more? I mean, you got to throw it to whoever's available. Mike will get more looks. J-Mac will get more looks, but Chris Godwin is going to be a huge part of this offense. I said it before. I've been talking to you guys about it all offseason. As soon as I heard the words Cooper Kupp roll, I knew he was in line for a big season. I have him over 100 catches. I have him over 1,000 yards. I have him probably around 6 or 7 touchdowns. He's already 2 there, so I think he's going to have a phenomenal season. But, yeah, you want to get J-Mac involved more. You want to get Mike more. But Baker just knows that on third down, Chris Godwin's going to be able to make the catch. I think he's had 8 catches in the first game, 7 catches in the second game. So we're talking 15 catches, and I think 8 of them have gone for first downs. That's just how good he is, 2 touchdowns. So you want to keep getting him. Greg says, is he a number 1 or is he benefiting from having Evans? There it is right there. I already talked about that. 28-3 said Bucs will be SOL without Godwin. I think Godwin, if you do lose him, it's a big loss, but I think you can slide J-Mac in there and kind of not feel as much of the effects. I think J-Mac can play capably in the slot, but he's not going to produce like CG. No one's going to. CG's a special talent. And now that he's got his burst back and his ability to separate, now that ACL is fully healed, I think he's going to take it to a next level. Faruka Wob says, if you think we miss Whitehead, we're going to be ugly crying when CG walks. Again, I don't think he goes. I don't. I remember when his first contract talks were up, his wife Mariah, who has so much influence, obviously, over the Bucs organization, that he was moved from outside to inside, said they don't want to go anywhere that's cold. They're really comfortable. Their family's from Delaware. I don't think they're going up north. They want to stay where it's nice and warm. So I don't think they're going to go anywhere out west. That's too far from a lot of their family who travels back and forth for games. I don't think they're going to go to Texas. And let's face it, I don't think Jerry Jones is going to pay him. I don't think the Texans need him with all the weapons they have. Miami certainly has a lot of money doled out on contracts. Jaguars, maybe the Jaguars. I don't think so. I don't think he goes to the Falcons either. I think he's home. They got their charity here. I think he takes a little bit less and takes a hometown discount. He got a pretty nice bag. He's not a really money guy. He's very humble. I think he sticks around for less. Greg, he's capable of being a number 1 aside from his touchdowns. His stats have looked similar to Evans. Look at last year. Yeah, again, stats only tell one story of it. If he's got to be the one who's getting doubled and teams are really, paying attention to on every snap, I don't know if he's got that. Dennis is only going to, Furkerweb says Dennis is only going to get better with more reps. Richard said finally saw significant Dennis play, and wow. Furco's in denial, saying hell no, LVD is going to play forever. 28-3 said who shut down the Lions tight end? That's a combination. That was Levante. That was KJ. That was Servassier. That was Whitehead. That was Tykee. It was a little bit of everybody shut down Sam Laporta, and just great coverage. Some of the JTS dropping back. Bowles loves to drop his outside linebackers. So just taking away the zones where he would normally get targeted and having a bunch of different guys chip in and help take care of him. It wasn't a one-man effort. And I don't know if Levante's got a first half Chiefs game where he shut down Kelsey and him, but we'll see. He might have 1 more or 2 in the tank. We'll see. That's why we got to keep. Godwin says second in fun. Him and Levante in the same year. Sad face. 23 says KJ is not good. KJ is good. He's just a different person. He's a different player. He's not going to make those big explosive plays, but he's going to make those sound tackles. He's going to be in the right spot at the right time because, he watches so much film that he's going to be there. I think Britt's a very good player, and there's a reason why you saw that snap split. And I think there's a reason why I'll continue to see that throughout the season, because I think both of them have a spot on the field and spot on the team with the way they play and with the way they work off of each other as well. Sal says LVD's Levante is being interviewed on ESPN as we speak. I just got that recording. That looks like a really good one. Thanks, Josh. She's out of here. Second and Fun said, it's funny to me how everyone begged for Britt over White last year. And 2 weeks into this year, the same people seem like they would rather have White. I think just Dennis had a really splashy game, and people like splash, they like pizzazz, the underrated, the unheralded guy never kind of gets that credit. People like Splash and Pizzazz, and Servassier has that. He's got a fun name to say, whether you call him Servassier or Voss. And KJ, is a guy who was a 5th round pick, much like Voss. And he's a guy who's not as splashy, but he makes the plays, like I said. So Matheson says, excellent analysis, guys. And yes, Dennis popped out. And as much as it hurts to hear, I agree that if Mr. David returns, it may be in a reduced role. Yeah, I haven't got any indications. I haven't really spoke to him about this. But I feel like if both of these guys continue to take the next step, the next level, and they, bring in another guy, draft or whatever, I think we could be looking at Levante's last season. He's fully year to year, as you guys heard on my podcast, fully year to year. You took a pause, almost didn't come back, and then did come back with some unfinished business. So if they win a Super Bowl, hands down, Levante's done. Hands down. I'll tell you that right now. If they go out in heartbreaking fashion or something like that, maybe he might have that inkling. But I would just treat this year as Levante's last year. I would treat it until I've known otherwise. Again, he said he's year to year. Third and Chris, Sal says, yeah, we tend to keep our own. I think he stays. I agree. First and run, second and fun, third and Godwin. Yeah, pretty much. Ferkweb said that Thunderbird get any snaps. He got one special team snap. I talked to him in the locker room today. He wanted to play more. Obviously, he was ready to go to play more, and I think he would have done a decent job. I don't think he would have done a good job as Zion is as a rookie and having to face some of those responsibilities. But he's certainly getting a heck of a good run in practice going up against the guys he's going up against. But he did play one special team snap, and hey, that's enough to get yourself in NFL history books. You can be a practice squad guy, a 53-man roster, but until you get a snap in, you can disappear like dust in the wind. And he got one snap in, so he's going to work and keep preparing himself. He's working on the right side mostly, but playing left as well, just in case any injuries pop up. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the first guys off the bench there. Especially, with Josh Hayes still injured. But Sal says KJ is too slow, but he's solid. Give me Dennis. I think a good tandem works for them. I don't think you need Dennis on every down. I think you can use, KJ in first and second down, clear rundowns, and then bring in Voss and nickel situations, and depending on what the offense is running and their personnel group. So I think there's a place for both of them on the field. All right. I appreciate all you guys for jumping in the comments for sure. Let's do a little bit of Broncos talk here. And I don't think this is a trap game for one. I know some people have thought that, overlook the Broncos. I think the reason why you can overlook the Broncos is the lack of talent on the ball. Both sides. They just lost their starting left tackle. Right tackle, Mike McGlinchey. They just don't have a lot of guys, man. I'm kind of looking at this team. I was trying to think even before, coming into this week, I'm like, who the Broncos even have? The fantasy guys, right? The Bo Nix and the Troy Franklin because they went to Oregon together, and it's this year's draft, and the Jaleel McLean and the Javonte Davids, and the Cortland Sutlins and obviously Patrick Surtain. But other than that, without looking, guys, give me a Josh Reynolds sign there, and give me a shout out a Broncos player that don't look it up, just write in the chat. I'll wait. I'll give you 30 seconds. Someone put a Broncos player in the chat without looking it up. I'll wait. 1, 2, 3. Somebody. Anybody? No. No. And you don't need household names to win games. You really don't. You don't need guys who are stars at their position. You need a I said Sutton already. Robinson? Who's Robinson? I don't see a Robinson, man. I don't see no Robinsons. Cuckoo, Mrs. Robinson. There ain't no Robinsons. There's Suttons. There's no Robinsons. There's nobody, man. They don't have a strong team. They're in this building phase right now. And they feel like they've got their quarterback, who, by the way, is leading the NFL with 4 interceptions. Lick your chop secondary. But they don't really. Their offensive line is kind of ho hum. They got Garrett Bowles at left tackle, who's been a stud. They got Luke Wattenberg, who's a young kid. Quinn Miners. We all really like Quinn Miners. Remember the Wisconsin Whitewater kid? He was. They took him. He went in the same year as Robert Hainsey. He went after Robert Hainsey. He's wearing half belly shirts and stuff like that. We all like Quinn Miners. He's a pretty good offensive lineman. Ben Powers, and their offensive line isn't great. They got Frank Crum now at right tackle. Not great. Greg Dulich as their tight end. They really, Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, Little Jordan Humphrey, like they don't have guys that really kind of scare you as far as we've got a game plan for this guy. Javonte Williams has been borderline bust, and injuries have played a big part of that, but he hasn't really produced. Cortland Sutton, if you can take away Cortland Sutton on defense, there's really nobody to beat you. And I think either Zion or Jamel could take him away. Josh Reynolds will have his catches and stuff like that. Devon Vale or Veal, and both of those guys are questionable, as well as the tight end. They have Adam Trotman. That's probably the most recognizable name, because of the Saints. On defense, Zach Allen is one of those under-the-radar edge rushers, but everybody else, Baron Browning is all right. John Franklin Myers popped up on the injury report. DJ Jones, their nose tackle. Alex Singleton. I do like Alex Singleton. I think he's a pretty good linebacker. They have Cody Barton, Jonathan Cooper. Again, they got rid of Justin Simmons, and they replaced him with Brandon Jones and PJ Locke. Guys who you're looking at, you're like, I don't really know much about these guys, and there's a good reason for it. They're not guys who are making splash plays, and they're not guys. These are guys who are just guys, who they're developing and trying to get to be where they want. Now, that's not to take away from them, because when you look at what they're doing and what they're allowing to opponents, they're only allowing 142 passing yards a game. Which is quite impressive. But again, a lot of that's Patrick Surtain. And a lot of that is you kind of look and say, okay, who have the Broncos played? And it's like, it doesn't really jump out at you. When you look at they're 0-2. Their first week was the Seahawks and the Steelers. The Steelers have some weapons. The Seahawks, week 1 is an anomaly, and they really don't have DK Metcalf over there. And Kenneth Walker really got a majority of this stuff because their run defense isn't that great. So, and you talk about their rushing, total rushing yards allowed. They're allowing 144 yards a game. So they're letting up quite a bit on the ground. I think this is a game that you can get that running game going. I think you can get that started here. Mike is going to be covered one-on-one. Talked about that a little bit. So it's going to have to be an interesting game plan to see how they utilize Chris Godwin, see how do they utilize J-Mac and different guys like that and get them into advantageous looks, because there's going to be times where, they can put an extra resource over there because of Patrick Surtain. But, I think all in all, the Bucs have a real good opportunity to continue their winning streak. I don't see this game as a trap game. I don't see this game as a potential loss for them. And we'll get more in depth in this. I'm going to have a Broncos beat writer come on, and we'll talk about, okay, what do the Bucs need to do? What are the weaknesses of the Broncos? What are the Bucs? How can the Bucs exploit them? Hint, there's a lot of weaknesses. And we'll get score predictions and stuff like that later in the week. But just a quick peek at it while we, look back at what that amazing game was. Edge of your seat towards the end there. I appreciate everybody for being in the comments. Appreciate everyone over at Twitter for sure. Come over here, like, subscribe, hit that notification, turn on the reminders. Come on, guys. Let's get me in front of more Bucs fans. This podcast, in my opinion, is pretty damn good. So let's get more people in front of it. But before we get out of here, I do want to give another shout out to one of our great sponsors over at Mosley Heating and Air. Appreciate them when Florida heat hits hard, and it's starting to cool down now, but it's still pretty humid and hot. You guys want to trust Mosley Heating and Air to keep you cool and comfortable. They have over 25 years of experience. Their family-owned business knows what it takes to keep your home's HVAC system running smoothly. Need a repair, a new system, or a maintenance plan? They've got you covered. Call Mosley Heating and Air today at 813-230-3742 or visit mosleyheatingandair.com. Mosley Heating and Air, where comfort meets reliability. They do great work. Definitely check them out. But that's going to do it for me. I appreciate you guys for joining in. We'll be back later this week, probably Friday, I think. And we'll have a special guest in here breaking down this Broncos-Bucs game. Otherwise, you know where you can find me, JC Allen NFL on Twitter. All my work over at Bucs Game Day. Got some amazing stuff coming out, some weekly content coming out that you guys can enjoy. And that's going to do it for me. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Pirate Parlay on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.